Welcome back. In case you missed the announcement from the last video, the entire team is currently at BlizzCon competing for the World Championships. So I'm literally here on my own for about a week or so, trying to pump out videos. And today's topic is going to be tips on how to get the most out of Sylvanas' abilities. And this is an article that was originally written by Corey Tincher, except this one I modified a little bit to make it more geared toward a general audience, and I sort of cut it down a little bit. So this is going to be a list of lesser known facts about Sylvanas' abilities. Now, Sylvanas is important to keep in your roster of, I guess, like available heroes, because she works extremely well on particular maps like the Haunted Mines, the Battlefield of Eternity, and the Infernal Shrine, just to name a few, where you capture an objective and you push with it. So it's really good to have Sylvanas there to lock down the turrets with her trait, make them not be able to attack your objective, to keep it healthy for longer. So here are some tips on how to get the most out of Sylvanas' abilities. We're going to start in order with your Q, which is Withering Fire. The first tip is to not always spam your Withering Fire. So I know it's easy to just constantly spam your Q and just hit it over and over again. Hey Chris, what? Show me your Q spam. Yeah. So it's generally a good idea not... Okay, I think that's enough. That's enough cues. It's generally a good idea to keep a few charges of Withering Fire held on inside your arsenal. It's easy to constantly spam it when you're pushing minions to try to push faster and to get consistent damage output. But sometimes you're going to need those extra charges for a little bit of burst damage to finish off, for example, a fleeing opponent. So if somebody is running away and they're forced to intercept paths with you, you can possibly finish them off if you have enough charges. But if you only have one because you've been constantly spamming it on minions, you're mostly not going to have enough burst damage to finish them off. And not only for heroes, but it's useful for structures as well, because it's actually possible with good geometric positioning to hit and disable both turrets at the same time. So if you're pushing up to a wall, you'll have turret up here, turret up here. If you're past that, a fort and a turret. If you're even deeper, a keep and a turret. So there's usually two structures there. So if you stand close to one and hit your Q about once every 1.2 seconds, and you basic attack the other structure, you can disable both and preserve the health pool of your minions by quite a bit. Now, it's harder to do that if you don't have a few charges stored up. So the thing to remember is that as long as you're not constantly sitting at 5 charges, you're not really going to be wasting any charges anyway. So it's useful to have some ready for when the situation arises. All right, moving on to our W, which is Shadow Dagger. Shadow Dagger, the most important thing about this ability is to be patient with your targets and your timing. So it's actually possible to cast your Shadow Dagger so it goes through an entire wave of minions, and then it goes through the gates, hits both turrets, travels through the minions again, and hits the fort during laning phase. Now, if you actually do that, then it's a relatively dangerous thing to do if you're that far forward to hit those minions in that position. But as long as you're safe, you can actually squeeze out a little bit of extra value. So a lot of people are just satisfied with just hitting the 7 minions. You can do much more with a single ability cast. And once you're out of laning phase and into team fighting, Shadow Dagger, you usually want to save it for enemies who are just stepping forward and are going to be retreating into their back line. For example, if a Tyrande comes up to apply Hunter's Mark on one of your frontline heroes to try to burst them down, it's easy to throw it onto Tyrande and then she'll gladly deliver your poison back to the rest of her team. On the other hand, using it on an enemy tank who is diving your backline, probably not the best idea because it's most likely not going to spread to anyone because he's all the way into your backline. All right, number 3, ability E is going to be the Haunting Wave. The key to Haunting Wave is to become absurdly unpredictable. And Haunting Wave is probably one of the most powerful escape abilities in the entire game. So most people know to use Haunting Wave in 2 basic manners. The first is to cast it in the direction you're running, and then you keep running, and then once you have a little bit of distance in front of you, you reactivate it to port a small distance in front of you. The other basic way to do it is to cast the Banshee over a terrain structure or over a wall, reactivate it and get to the other side so they can't chase you. A more advanced way to use this is to cast this in one direction and then start moving in the opposite direction. So from there, based off of your opponent's reactions, there's two different things that you can do. If your opponent is going to be chasing the Banshee and you run this direction, you don't have to reactivate it. Just let the Banshee go off. Let them try to outplay you by chasing your Banshee and just stay here and create distance. Or if they're going to chase your body instead of the Banshee, let them chase your body and then have even a bigger jump distance. The key here is to change up your behavior throughout the match to keep your opponents confused. If you constantly do one thing, eventually they're probably going to catch on. So change it up a bit and make them keep guessing. And finally, the heroic for Wailing Hero. The key here is to save Wailing Arrow for the best and perfect moment. So due to a few nerfs a few months ago, Wailing Arrow doesn't exactly deal as much damage as it used to. Now, I used to be a Sylvanas main, and I still, by habit, throw it out whenever enemies are clumped to get maximum damage on that, and that no longer is the most optimal thing to do. Instead, it's better to use it, to save it and use it when you can cancel important channeled spells. For example, ETC's Mosh Pit would be a good candidate, Lily's Jug of 1,000 Cups as well. And it's much worth it to cancel their ability than it is now to use it to deal damage. But in the case that you can both deal damage and silence enemies at the same time, you can synergize it with the end of lockdown abilities, for example, like Zagara's Devouring Maw, Zeratul Void Prison, Gazlow's Gravel Bomb 3000. So there, not only do you deal the damage after they're clumped up, but you can also prevent victims from escaping, either through like using gap closers, gap creators, distance creators, or by healing themselves to safety. All right, so that's going to be it for the tips for her abilities. As you can see, Sylvanas' abilities have quite a bit more... What? Sylvanas' abilities have quite a bit more depth than they initially may seem, so hopefully this helped you out a bit in trying to master the intricacies of Sylvanas. And I'll see you guys... Oh, what? All right. I'll see you guys next time.
VP locking down the rest of the team. The Polymorph goes off, Haunting Wave over the wall, and Tempo Storm. I think they have done it. We're going to a game number 3, Kubi. Wow.